Hello friends, this is Manoj Agrawal from Banking Frontiers. As always, we're here for a very interesting discussion. The topic today is digital transformation. Today, I have with me two very eminent people. I have Mr. Padma Bhushan Bandure. He's the Chief Technology Officer at IDBI Bank. I have Sunil Thakur, who is the country head for BMC software for India and SAARC. Welcome, Padma Bhushan. Welcome, Sunil.
Thank you, Manoj.
So friends, before we jump into the question, I'd request Mr. Padma Bhushan and Mr. Sunil to briefly introduce themselves, their background, the kind of work they have done, what is their expertise. Mr. Padma Bhushan, can you have your introduction to begin with?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Manoj. And also, I am currently working with IDBI as the Chief Technology Officer for the past now almost 2.5 years now. And I have been out and out into IT for the past 23 years or so. And have been working, predominantly with banking customers. I was on the other side of the table earlier, so working from the IT side through IT companies towards the banking customers and other customers also like manufacturing and retail and other government customers. But then using my banking exposure on the IT side, I have been fortunate enough to work with Indian banks as well as global banks. And the currently I'm in IDBI. Previous to this, I was with State Bank. So I currently manage here the entire IT infrastructure and various other critical projects. The bank is currently embarked upon or is embarking on.
Okay. Sunil, can we have your introduction as well?
Yes, sure, Manoj. And good afternoon to you and good afternoon to Mr. Padma Bhushan. It's indeed a pleasure to be talking to both of you today. I have been in IT, I would say the other side of it, selling to the IT companies for about 25 years plus now. And in BMC, I have been leading the business of India and SAARC for about 6 years now. And in the past 6 years, we have successfully built up a very high performance team, which is delivering huge year-on-year growth. The customer satisfaction rating has significantly improved, and we continue to make huge investments in our people, in more offices, in bigger breadth to support all our the improved business that is coming our way, serve our customers well. Before this, I was working in a company called Hewlett Packard for about 10 years in various roles and capacity. And before that, I used to work for BSNL, and which was under the Tata's umbrella. So I was a Tata employee. So that's been my journey for so many years. But I've worked in all kinds of fields. I've worked in telecom, I've worked in system integration, I've worked in software. Currently, software is something which is making huge difference to everyone's life. And especially after pandemic, I mean, there's been no dearth of conversation and discussion that we are having around this field. So pretty excited with what I'm doing, and I'm looking forward to a great future ahead. Thank you very much.
So great, gentlemen. Let's start our discussion. So my first question is this. Given that there have been so many drivers of business transformation and digital transformation, currently, what do you see as the main drivers that are pushing banks to undertake this digital transformation and keep up with the competition as well as the opportunities?
Okay. Now, let me begin by saying, it is always has been the transformation of the customer journey led by digital. Okay. Rather than saying it's a complete digital transformation. Now, over here, customer is an umbrella term. So whomsoever is using the system becomes a customer. It could be the end user, it could be the internal customer who is the employee, or it could be your some other partner. When we say in terms of banks, okay, we are engaging with various other partners and regulators. So those could also be our customers. So it is always the customer journey, the transformation of customer journey is led by digital technology. The whole idea has been, as everybody knows, improving the experience. Okay, improving the experience, making it easier and simplified journeys for them. Okay, with the latest technologies or maybe doing some radical shifts into the journeys of the customer. When we go to the other aspect of the customer, saying the employee, basically it is about productivity. So how productive we can make him. Okay. And thirdly, if we say of the third say type of customer, the external parties or the other partners whom we are say engaging with, it's about how efficient we are in delivering the services. Okay.
Mhm.
So really, it is always has been about customers. Okay, there are say certain technologies say around the corner, technologies which are making huge noise about using those into various business perspective. But until unless those are meaningful to the customer, okay, as such, in delivering the right service to the customer, say people personalized services at the right time, and it becomes efficient to the say customer. Okay, only then the transformation really makes sense. So
Correct.
coming back to your question, okay, about the drivers. As I said, one of them is purely and major part is done by the customer itself. Okay,
Okay.
customer is a huge driver. Okay, whether it is be it say continuous improvement on his side in the services. Say we have been seeing Googles and Amazons. Okay, if you see their play stores, you will see every week there are some certain upgrades. Okay, that they
Mm.
give. So it has been continuous improvement led by the technologies. Now when we talk about say banks, now bank being predominantly say I would say the early adopters of technology being into
Mm.
the financial service space, and due to that early adoption we also have a huge legacy of our technology footprint. Okay,
Mm.
which kind of becomes a white elephant, okay, to move. Now, one important aspect of say the transformation, again the end result is again the customer part. So one important aspect becomes about modernization. How do we modernize your technology infrastructure so that your TAT of delivering the services to the customer, or your TAT in improving your employee productivity, or your TAT in improving the economics of delivering the service to the partner becomes faster.
But I want to focus a little more on three words that you used, which could be one is the technology, existing infrastructure, whether you want to use the word baggage or not. Other is you mentioned governance, and the third you mentioned regulation. These are three heavyweights for the bank. So are banks like you thinking in terms of becoming agile like them, or you think that you want to be agile in your own way? Um, so, I mean, is it creating something new for yourself or copying the best that is there in the market? What works better?
See, firstly, I would say there is nothing wrong in copying what is best. Okay,
Okay.
that is number one. And if like what we have observed over the past, I would say a decade or so, especially on the PSU bank side, if you
Hmm.
see there has been a huge say movement going on in recruiting the technology say laterals into the banks
Yes.
for them to be more digital or technology savvy. I would say that would be a better word to use, technology savvy. So if you see there are huge recruitments going on in PSU banks, I would leave aside the merger story, but then there are huge recruitments going on the technology side. So
Right.
what it means that the banking say organizations as well as the regulator, they really want to get some catalyst, okay, to be able to say make themselves more techno savvy, and the ultimate outcome, as I've been saying, is the customer journeys.
Hmm.
So now this catalyst, one area is definitely getting some help from outside. Now that help could be in terms of recruitment. Second help is in terms of the startups or fintechs. Okay, so there were there from them how we can work with them collaboratively rather than
Hmm.
competing. And third, as always, for the say the economics or the cost, something you have in house is always better. It gives you more flexibility,
Okay.
more agility. So yes, the banks are also working on finding the right amount of balance. Okay, what can be say the typical age-old problem about outsourcing and insourcing. So what
Hmm.
can be done in house and what can be done say from the fintechs or other vendors.
So let me thank you, Mr. Bahadur. Let me come to Sunil. Sunil, if you follow up, if we follow up on what Mr. Bahadur has said, how do you see an IT company like yours helping a bank be more customer centric, be more reactive, keeping into account, keeping into considerations of legacy technologies, regulations, governance issues? I mean, I don't think today a technology company come and say, I'm going to give you this one piece and rest you manage. I think IT companies have to be more holistic in the kind of solutions they deliver, keeping all kinds of customer satisfaction and governance and regulations, etc., in mind. How do you see BMC evolving and delivering those kind of support or enablement for digital transformation?
Yeah, sure, Manoj. And it was an interesting opening remark by Mr. Padma Bhushan. So as you rightly said, all these companies, which is especially the banking companies, also the government agencies and large enterprises, everybody is going through this digital transformation. And technology correctly is an enabler, right? The problem is nobody is starting from a blank sheet, right? Unlike the startups or the fintechs which have come up, right? They go through a web of existing technologies. So they have this idea of pursuing a digital transformation journey, go closer to their users, give them a better experience. So they have these DevOps, agile team working to create the great front end. But ultimately, it goes and hits that back end, which is established over multiple generation. Maybe there is a mainframe there is a server environment. There could be processes which are, come up over a period of time. Now, all this is not just simplifying it, but it's making the world a lot more complicated for organizations like, who have been in the business for a longer time. Now, there are many ways, we are trying to change and trying to adapt to some of these circumstances, so as to address and help our customers to address this growing need for having a great collaborative platforms. So one big thing that we have done is, I gave this concept of a service ops, and I will give you two concepts. I'll give you a concept of service ops that we have, and I'm also going to talk about capacity planning. These are two very important if that happens to solve something like this. The first thing is, whenever these two different teams are working on a problem, they should get one single view of the entire infrastructure. So if there is a ticket being raised or an incident being raised, where is the impact? So it's in the monitoring side of it that you see the impact. So if there is a real-time dashboard which gets all this data fed into one place, and there is one single dashboard everybody is looking into, you're very likely to come to a probability that the problem is in this node. Otherwise, one team is looking at different set of dashboards, and they conclude the problem is somewhere else, and the other one starts to conclude somewhere else. So there is always these complexities. So this concept of service ops is where we have merged the monitoring data, which is your log data, your monitoring of servers and those kind of things, along with this ticket data, and we bring it together for everyone to view. The second thing that, a big change and a big talked about thing these days is about the capacity planning. And especially when, you have these demands which are coming up, the business demands that keep coming up off and on. So what happens is the moment there is a business demand, what's the level of services that's needed to be delivered? What amount of system resources, servers that require to be delivered for that services to be accomplished, right? And also, one of the things that we cannot do anymore is believe in the averages. They're all misleading, right? So approximately it could be so much, and then you try and do it. You can't. The business demands have also changed, like Mr. Padma Bhushan said. They are not like a smooth line earlier. They're more zigzag. So they keep coming up and going down. That's how you're responding. You're responding much quicker to people, right?
Interesting, Sunil. Interesting. My next question, Mr. Bahadur. In light of this discussion, so you've talked about, you and Sunil both have talked about plans. We can do this, we can hire people, we can outsource certain things, insource certain things, follow the regulatory guidelines. But when it comes to execution, what are some of the actual problems that you face? And are you able to use previous techniques to solve them? Or do you have to come up with new techniques to handle some of the issues that arise during the implementation and post-implementation phase?
Yes, see, nowadays new problems require say new way of thinking and new say solutions are also required. Now those may not be completely new, but yes, there are certain tweaking to be required. I'll just take the cue from what Mr. Sunil said, okay, regarding that say one dashboard to resolve all the problems. So I'll try to address the post development say question first.
Okay.
See, we, as rightly said, Mr. Sunil, we need one dashboard or say one display, whatever you may say, or a single pane of glass for to see the end-to-end journey, okay, and to see where is it really causing a problem. Really, actually, it should be even one step before that. Even before the problem comes, we should be able to proactively take the right measures to avoid. I will not say it can become zero, but to avoid major disruptions. Okay, because there are always surprises. It's technology, so it's bound to have its own element of surprise. Okay, but then these dashboards or the single pane of glass are required. That is only one part of the say the solution. Second part is, see, we may have the best of the dashboards. Okay, we may have the best of the say analytics or analysis available to us. But if those people who are supposed to handle these areas, okay, now typically in these journeys you will have somebody from the networks, somebody from the server infrastructure, somebody from the security, somebody from the application, then back to back supported by the respective. But then if these people are not say working in a collaborative fashion, maybe it is co-location or maybe it is virtually co-located. Okay, so these things are required to take the decision then and there itself. So typically for network, what we have been seeing, there is a network operation center, or for a security, there is a security operation center. So there really has to be a command center for such kind of problems, especially on the digital side of things. See, on the online channels or say various other digital footprints that the banks or organizations may have. For that, we need to have a digital command center in place.
Right. So like a bank is not a technology company per se, so it has to focus more on doing the banking business. Right.
Correct.
Perfect. Sunil, would you like to add to that? Can you give some perspective on how much better are banks actually able to become using these kind of single plane views, and what kind of training or skills or training is required for people to start using these tools effectively and deliver better SLA or better lower downtime or better capacity utilization? How do you see what kind of results?
Yeah, Manoj, and skilling is very important. And I think I was very happy to hear from Mr. Padma Bhushan the emphasis that he's laying down on skilling. That's one place where everybody has to be paying a lot of attention. The reason is, world and technology is changing so very fast. And if you want to optimally and correctly utilize the investment that you have made, you got to be skilled to do it. And scaling is all about, paying attention to it, getting it done regularly, at least for the investments and technologies that everyone has made. So skilling is very important. BMC Education Services is something that we offer to all our customers who are implementing any complex technologies from us. But coming back to your earlier questions, Manoj, and this question is about, how are the tools helping companies to become better? So I must just tell you, as things change and things improve, actually all of our tools now use machine learnings, data analytics, and artificial intelligence extensively in all our technologies, just to put everybody ahead in the game. The idea is, like Mr. Bhushan was saying, to fix any problem quicker and probably being proactive to fix an issue even before they occur and impact the customer. And I'll give you an example. Suppose there is an alert that you get. Now, how do you know that that is a routine fluctuation in utilization or there is a problem in the making? right? So if you do not know the difference, you're going to put a lot of resources to fix that, while it may actually be a false alarm. So suppose you put a static threshold and said, any time that CPU utilization goes beyond 80%, you'll get alerts. But you will get alerts even when these spikes are perfectly understandable, like high CPU utilization first thing on Monday morning, or if there is a start of a new thing, there's too much of activity, and it's understandable. What we end up doing is we use machine learning algorithms to establish a learned baseline that reflects a typical utilization pattern over a course of week or time of the year or something, right? So you're going to get the alert only when the threshold crosses in both of them. And you can have multiple parameters set like this, and then you can define it, and you can use artificial intelligence to predict if there is something that is going to fail in future. So the foresight will apply and will allow you to be more predictive in your approach. So usually what we have seen is the interval between a deviation from a normal baseline and disruption in service is approximately about 3 hours. And it can give you a huge amount of window for you to go and fix a problem.
Sounds interesting. So I'd like to take the discussion next to one of the points that Mr. Bahadur mentioned, which is automation. Mr. Bahadur, how are you looking at automation to make things, to improve customer satisfaction, to improve on various parameters and try to achieve customer delight, which is still a difficult goal?
See, what I would say is uh, nowadays, see, most of the banks are using certain intelligent automations, okay, one way or the other, maybe at the operational level or maybe at the customer level. There are chat bots, there are conversational, say, bots on the WhatsApp. There are some robotic automation, say, which are improving their internal processes like end of days or say reconciliations, okay. But now what banks are generally and what we are generally trying to do is taking this to the next level. And as what Mr. Sunil was saying, using AI. So one of the AI was in that say operational piece. But yes, AI is also being used, and robotic process automation is also being used, so that we get more benefits in terms of the transformation, the digital transformation that we were talking about earlier, and also in terms of efficiencies of the workflow. Okay, the overall efficiencies of the workflow. See, why we are saying that is, see, automation, or you may say AI-based automation, actually help us both as banks or as you may say customer service agents to perform their roles better. Okay, and by automating certain things, and so that customers receive their services faster, better, okay, and at the right time.
That's interesting. So Sunil, if I can ask you to add on to, I picked up 2 points from what Mr. Bahadur has said. One is there are a lot of things that are still manual. Okay. Another thing he's mentioned, there's a lot of data, whether it is invoices, whether it is payments, whether it is so many things. So apparently data is emerging. Already many people recognize data as a big asset. And of course, there's all kinds of social media data and unstructured data and all that. So for BMC as a company, what does it mean to handle data, to optimize the role play between infrastructure and data? How do you see that evolving? How do you support banks in doing that?
Manoj, phenomenal. And I will actually continue from where Mr. Padma Bhushan stopped, and talking about automation. And you rightly said, there are many places where there's a lot of chances or for us to automate things. And if you truly look back and you look now, the old adage that, banker hours, you remember that term? It doesn't hold true anymore. Always on, 24 by 7 by 365 availability is now a business necessity. So it follows that the processes that enable and support that availability must always be on too, right? So that's where, I think automation comes in. And I will take that example of end of day jobs in the banks. I'm not 100% expert on it, but let me tell you, this is what I hear from all our customers and wherever we've implemented it. Modern end of the day jobs are complex. They are not just time defined. It's not just long running, overnight, low priority or deferred. But there is complexities arriving from trigger events which are happening in different other systems to complete that end of the job. So right first, those jobs have to finish, and then downstream jobs have to go on, and then ultimately the whole thing have to go on. As a response, what we do is we end up staffing to get those jobs completed smoothly. But what happens is staffing means you're putting in manual interventions, and manual intervention, they slow down the process and they introduce error. So what you need here is an automated platform. And I'm talking about a platform, something that gives you full visibility and not pockets of automations for you to accomplish the task efficiently. Now, I can give you an example of a very popular tool, which is Control M, and this is used by at least 2 to 3 large banks in India right now extensively. What it does is it gives you a single view of the whole process with the ability to manage dependencies and run downstream process as and when they are ready. Not just this, there are regular errors that we come across. It's just a straight fix that has to happen. You can actually automate that error correction also. So the overall impact is significant. And I'll give you an example of ME Bank of Australia, where they implemented something like this. And their average overnight batch window was reduced by 3 hours for the banking platform. Now, furthermore, because they introduced so much of automation on the time of issue resolution significantly reduced, the staffing requirement went almost down by 80%. So you see from, say, one full-time equivalent FT, their requirement went down to 0.2 FT. Okay. The idea that I'm trying to accomplish here is that to automate any complex business service, the companies can't rely on basic, which is usually app-specific scheduling tools that require custom development, and they have limited scalability. Or they will introduce a manual process at some point or the other, which again will have errors introduced. Speed and operational excellence is fast becoming non-negotiable. So you need to have one single view again of the entire process and the automation that happens in between, and you should be able to trigger and see where it stopped.
Interesting. Thank you, Mr. Bhadware and Mr. Thakur, for throwing light on two different aspects of the same issue, automation. One is how business can benefit from it. And Sunil, you described how the organization can benefit from it and make all kinds of processes smoother. I'm really thankful, Mr. Bhadware and Mr. Thakur, for all the inputs that you shared.
Thank you, Mr. Manoj. Thank you for having me here. And it was a pleasure discussing with you on this session, as well as really appreciate the views shared by Mr. Thakur. And hopefully we'll meet again.
Wonderful. And likewise for me, it was an interesting conversation. I learned a lot, as it always happens. You are an expert in this field, but wonderful. Thank you very much. And thank you for having us here.